I never thought a few lines written in crayon could change our lives. There are moments in life that feel so ordinary, so small, that you never think twice about them. You pour the cereal, check your phone, and drive to work, believing that tomorrow will look just like today. That was my life for years. Quiet, predictable, and unremarkable. I wasn't unhappy, just invisible. A single mother trying to hold things together in a small two-bedroom house on the edge of a fading town, where the paint peeled a little more every winter and the grocery list was always longer than the money in my wallet. My daughter, Lily, was 6. Bright, curious, and heartbreakingly kind in a world that hadn't yet shown her how unkind it could be. Every morning she'd sit at the kitchen table, swinging her little legs and humming nonsense songs while she colored. Crayons were her magic wand. She used them to make sense of everything around her. When I couldn't afford real toys, she'd draw them. When she missed her father, who'd been gone since she was 3, she'd sketch his face from memory in lines that wobbled and bled together. Sometimes I'd find those drawings tucked under her pillow, like she was trying to keep him close. The mornings always started the same. I'd rush between making coffee, ironing my thrift store uniform, and reminding Lily to finish her breakfast before the bus came. The smell of burnt toast and cheap detergent filled the air. It wasn't glamorous, but it was home. And in the middle of all that chaos, there was always Lily, laughing at something she'd drawn, asking me if rainbows have birthdays, if clouds get tired, if crayons ever run out of dreams. I used to envy her ability to see the world in color when mine had long turned gray. Her art covered every wall, a chaotic mosaic of hearts, stick figures, and sunshine. Each drawing was a small rebellion against the heaviness I tried so hard to hide. She didn't know about the overdue bills stacked in the drawer, or the nights I'd sit up doing math that never added up, trying to stretch hope like elastic until it snapped. She just knew that Mommy smiled and told her everything would be okay. Lily's favorite spot was the little corner of the living room where the afternoon light hit just right. She'd sit cross-legged on the floor, a box of broken crayons beside her, and talk softly to her drawings, as if they could talk back. Sometimes I'd stand in the hallway and watch her, struck by how peaceful she looked, and wonder if innocence was the only real kind of wealth we ever get to own. Then came the morning that would change everything, though it didn't look any different from the rest. The alarm clock buzzed too early, the coffee tasted burnt, and the car refused to start. I remember snapping at Lily because she'd left her crayons scattered on the counter again, right next to the stack of unpaid bills. She looked up at me, startled, her big brown eyes glistening. "Sorry, Mommy," she whispered, and began gathering them in her tiny hands. The guilt hit me instantly, sharp and cold. She didn't deserve my frustration. She deserved a world that didn't make her mother so tired. That evening, after work, I found her sitting quietly at the table, tongue peeking out in concentration as she pressed a pink crayon against paper. She'd been unusually quiet all day, which usually meant she was thinking hard about something. I leaned over her shoulder and saw what she was writing, not just drawing this time, but writing clumsy block letters that leaned too far in one direction. It read, "Dear Mr. Big Company, my mommy works really hard, and she loves your cereal, but we can't buy it anymore. Can you please make it cost less? Thank you. Love, Lily." I stared at it, half amused, half heartbroken. She'd written it on plain printer paper, decorated with shaky hearts and a crooked rainbow. The innocence of it hit me like a punch. She didn't understand economics or corporate greed. She just thought kindness could fix anything, even the price of groceries. "Sweetheart," I said gently, "why did you write that?" She looked up, smiling shyly. Because I heard you say we can't buy the good cereal anymore. Maybe if I ask nicely, they'll listen. Daddy always said nice words can change things. Her words broke something open in me, something I'd sealed off years ago when hope started to feel like a luxury. I told her it was beautiful and promised I'd mail it for her, though I had no intention of actually doing it. It was just a child's fantasy, a tiny act of imagination. But she insisted, folding the letter carefully, licking the envelope, and drawing a heart on the back. "Now it's ready," she said proudly. That night, after she went to bed, I sat alone in the dim light of the kitchen. The letter lay on the table beside my empty coffee mug. I picked it up, reading it again, unable to stop smiling through the ache in my chest. It was so pure, so unfiltered by the bitterness of adulthood. Part of me wanted to keep it forever, a reminder of the kind of love that only exists before the world teaches you otherwise. Instead, on a whim, I took a photo of it and posted it online. The caption was simple. "My 6-year-old wrote this today. Maybe the world needs a little more of her honesty." I didn't expect anyone to care. I had maybe 24 followers, most of them moms from the PTA. I went to bed thinking nothing of it. The next morning I woke to the sound of my phone vibrating non-stop. At first I thought something was wrong, maybe a storm alert or spam messages. But when I opened my notifications, my heart skipped. Thousands of likes, hundreds of shares, comments pouring in from people all over the country. This made me cry. Your daughter is precious. Faith in humanity restored. It was surreal. Lily padded into the room, rubbing her eyes, clutching her worn-out stuffed bear. "Mommy, what's that sound?" she asked, tilting her head at my buzzing phone. I just smiled, unable to explain it. Something extraordinary was happening. Something I couldn't yet understand. All day, the messages kept coming. News outlets wanted to feature the story. Strangers sent kind words. Some said they'd never seen anything so pure. I was both flattered and terrified. What had I started? That night, as I tucked Lily into bed, she asked if her letter had reached the cereal man yet. I told her not yet, but soon. She smiled sleepily and whispered, "I hope he listens." Then she closed her eyes, drifting off to dreams I couldn't begin to imagine. I stood there for a long time, watching her breathe, the glow from her nightlight painting her face in soft gold. In that stillness, I realized something was shifting. The world beyond our small house had suddenly tilted toward us, as if waiting for our next move. And I had no idea just how far that simple crayon letter was about to travel, or how completely it would change everything we knew. But that letter was about to travel farther than I could ever imagine. It was just a child's letter, until it wasn't. For 2 days after Lily wrote that letter, I hardly thought about it. It sat on the counter next to the pile of unpaid bills and grocery coupons, the paper now slightly curled at the edges where her small hands had pressed too hard with the crayon. Life had a way of pushing wonder to the background. Between work, exhaustion, and the endless repetition of survival, the extraordinary always seemed to get buried under the ordinary. It wasn't until Saturday morning that I picked up the letter again. The sunlight streamed through the kitchen window, catching on the waxy streaks of color that made up Lily's crooked rainbow and her uneven handwriting. There was something sacred about it, so sincere, so unapologetically pure. The words were imperfect, but the message was unmistakable. She believed people listened. She believed kindness mattered. She believed that if you asked gently enough, even the biggest problems could be fixed. I envied that faith, because somewhere along the way, I had lost it. Lily sat across from me, her cereal bowl half empty, humming softly as she colored another picture. She was always drawing, sometimes animals with oversized hearts, sometimes houses with smiling windows. That morning she was drawing a family of stick figures standing under a rainbow, holding hands. There was a man there, too, tall, smiling, drawn in blue crayon. Her father. She didn't say it, but I knew. She never stopped missing him. "Mommy," she said suddenly, "do you think the cereal man will like my letter?" I smiled, faintly, folding the paper between my hands. "I think he'll love it, sweetheart." "Will he write back?" she asked. "I don't know," I said softly. "Maybe." Her face brightened with hope. She went back to coloring, humming louder now, completely at peace with the idea that the world was listening. Watching her like that, so unaware of how complicated life could be, made something twist deep in my chest. I wanted to protect that innocence forever, to shield it from disappointment. That afternoon, while Lily napped, I found myself staring at the letter again. I don't know what made me do it. Boredom, maybe, or curiosity, but I took a picture and opened my social media app. I typed a simple caption. "My 6-year-old wrote this to her favorite cereal brand. I wish we all still saw the world like this." Then I hit post. I didn't expect anything. Maybe a few likes from my friends, maybe a comment or two about how cute it was. I didn't realize that I'd just lit a fuse. By the time I started making dinner, the post had a few dozen likes. That was more than usual, but nothing dramatic. I smiled at the small bump of attention, thinking how proud Lily would be when I showed her. After dinner, I checked again. Now there were hundreds. The numbers kept climbing. Likes, comments, shares. People were tagging others, saying, "This broke me. Read this. This little girl speaks more truth than most adults." Something in me stirred. Excitement, confusion, disbelief. Why this post? Why now? The internet was unpredictable, a storm you couldn't see coming until it swallowed you. That night, I tucked Lily into bed as usual. She asked if the cereal man had seen her letter yet, and I told her not yet, but maybe soon. She nodded, satisfied, and drifted to sleep. I kissed her forehead, turned off the light, and went back to the kitchen. My phone buzzed constantly, the screen lighting up every few seconds. I set it face down on the counter, telling myself I'd deal with it tomorrow. But curiosity won. I picked it up again, scrolling through the comments. People from all over the country, some even from other countries, sharing how the letter made them cry, how it reminded them of their own childhoods, their own mothers, their own innocence. Others shared stories of struggle, of choosing between groceries and bills, of missing the simplicity of seeing good in the world. It wasn't just a cute letter anymore. It was a mirror, reflecting something everyone had forgotten how to see. I stayed up late that night, caught between awe and anxiety. There was a strange beauty in how fast it spread, but also something unsettling. The internet had a way of turning moments into movements, and I wasn't sure I was ready for that kind of attention. By morning, things had changed. When I opened my phone, there were thousands of notifications. The post had crossed into places I never imagined, shared by parenting pages, local news outlets, and even a few verified accounts I recognized. My heart pounded as I scrolled. Every few minutes, the number went up again. Tens of thousands of likes, comments from journalists asking for interviews, messages from strangers thanking me for raising such a kind-hearted child. It felt unreal. When Lily came running into the kitchen, still in her pajamas, I tried to act normal. But she noticed my shaking hands as I held the phone. "Mommy, what's wrong?" "Nothing, baby," I said, forcing a smile. "It's just, your letter is making a lot of people happy." Her eyes widened. "Really?" "Really," I said, People are talking about it all over the internet." She giggled, clapping her hands. "So the serial man saw it?" "Not yet," I said. "But I think he will soon." For the rest of the day, I tried to stay grounded. But the truth was, the story was no longer ours. It had a life of its own now, racing through timelines, news feeds, and group chats. The comments kept coming faster than I could read them, each one a piece of a growing wave that felt unstoppable. People called her the little girl with the crayon heart. By evening, a reporter from a local news station reached out, asking if they could do a small story. I hesitated. It all felt too fast, too big. But part of me wanted to say yes, to share Lily's innocence with more people. Maybe her kindness could remind the world of something it had lost. I agreed. The reporter came the next morning. She was kind, young, and eager, her smile wide and camera ready. She interviewed both of us in the living room. Lily sat on the couch clutching her favorite stuffed bear, answering questions with the same sincerity that had written that letter. When the reporter asked why she'd written to the cereal company, Lily said simply, "Because Mommy works hard, and I don't want her to be sad when we can't buy the good cereal. Maybe they can help us." The reporter teared up. I did too. It was impossible not to. The story aired that evening, and within hours it spread beyond our town. Regional stations picked it up. Then national blogs. Then major news outlets. My phone buzzed so much I had to silence it just to sleep. Except I didn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering what exactly I had unleashed. When I finally closed my eyes, it was with a strange mix of gratitude and fear. Gratitude that people saw Lily's heart, and fear of what would come next. The internet could love you one moment and destroy you the next. I knew that. But for now, all I saw was light. All I heard were words of kindness. The next morning, as I poured my coffee, I noticed Lily standing at the window, staring out at the street. "Mommy," she said, "what if the cereal man really comes here?" I laughed, thinking she was joking. "Oh, sweetheart, CEOs don't just show up at people's doors." She turned to me with a grin that made my heart swell. "You never know, Mommy. Maybe he's nice." Her words echoed in my mind long after she'd gone to play. Maybe he's nice. Maybe people still listened. Maybe miracles still happened. I didn't believe in them anymore, but my daughter did. And that belief was powerful enough to move something in the world. I didn't know it yet, but she was right. Because somewhere out there, far from our little house, someone very important had just read her letter. And he wasn't laughing. He was making a call. 2 days later, my phone started buzzing non-stop. By morning, we weren't just another family. We were the story everyone was talking about. It started slowly, like a whisper growing louder in a crowded room. At first, I thought the surge of attention would die down after a day or two, that people would scroll past, find something new to feel good about, and move on. That's what always happened online. But this was different. Something about Lily's letter hit a nerve, something raw and unfiltered that people weren't used to seeing anymore. By Monday morning, my phone looked like it was melting. Every time I refreshed my notifications, there were hundreds more, comments, shares, direct messages from strangers thanking us, reporters asking for quotes, people tagging friends and family saying, "Read this. You need to see this." The numbers didn't make sense anymore. Thousands became tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands. And still, it climbed. When I walked into work that morning, the office buzzed in a way I'd never experienced before. Co-workers who'd barely said 2 words to me in months suddenly surrounded my desk, waving their phones. "Oh my God, you're famous!" One of them laughed, shoving her screen toward me. My face, and Lily's letter were everywhere, on news apps, parenting blogs, even trending hashtags. It was surreal. I smiled awkwardly, unsure how to respond. I worked as a cashier at a small grocery store, the kind of place where gossip traveled faster than the barcode scanner. Customers started recognizing me. A woman in line smiled and said, "You're the one with the daughter who wrote that sweet cereal letter, right? It's all over my Facebook." Her voice was warm, kind, genuine. But when I nodded, every head in line turned toward me. Suddenly, I wasn't invisible anymore, and that scared me more than I expected. By the time my shift ended, the store manager pulled me aside, half joking, half serious. "You might need an agent soon," he said. "You've gone viral." At home, Lily was sitting on the couch watching cartoons, unaware of how her small act of kindness had turned into a digital storm. I watched her from the doorway, her little legs tucked under her, crayons scattered around her feet. She looked so peaceful, untouched by the chaos outside our walls. For a moment, I wished I could keep her there forever, in that bubble of innocence where nothing hurt and everything made sense. I turned on my laptop, and that's when I realized just how big this had become. Our post had been featured on multiple news websites. Headlines screamed things like, "Little girl's crayon letter melts America's heart." There were screenshots of Lily's handwriting, close-up photos of the letter I'd posted, even analysis pieces about the power of childlike empathy. My stomach twisted as I scrolled. Everyone had an opinion. Some people cried over it. Others debated whether I'd written it myself. The internet had taken our moment and turned it into a mirror of its own emotions. Then the phone calls started. First local outlets, then national ones. Reporters wanted interviews. Morning shows wanted to feature Lily. Talk show producers sent emails offering to fly us out for live segments. It felt like standing in the middle of a hurricane, trying to stay upright while everything swirled around me. That night, I sat at the kitchen table surrounded by a stack of printed messages and media requests. Lily played in the next room, humming softly to herself. I didn't know what to do. The attention felt flattering, but also terrifying. How do you protect something pure when the whole world wants a piece of it? When Lily peeked in and saw the papers, she asked, "Mommy, why are so many people talking about my letter?" I hesitated, searching for words that wouldn't shatter her innocence. "Because it made them feel something," I said finally. "You reminded them that kindness still exists." She grinned proudly. "Then that's good, right?" "It's good," I said softly, though a quiet unease settled in my chest. Because good things that go viral don't always stay good. The internet has a way of twisting stories until they barely resemble the truth. The next morning, things escalated again. Major TV networks mentioned Lily's letter in their morning broadcasts. A celebrity reposted it on their account, captioning it, "The world needs more kids like her." That single post sent everything into overdrive. Suddenly, journalists camped outside our house, camera crews idling at the curb. I had to close the curtains just to breathe. I tried to ignore the chaos, but the noise was relentless. Emails, calls, notifications. Some people offered money. Others wanted to send gifts. One woman even offered to set up a fundraiser. I didn't know who to trust or what to say. Gratitude warred with panic. It wasn't supposed to go this far. By the afternoon, my inbox was a blur. Hundreds of unread emails stacked on top of each other, each one sounding more urgent than the last. I scanned a few headlines. Human interest opportunity. Exclusive rights inquiry. Collaboration proposal. It was dizzying. I shut my laptop and sat back, trying to calm the tremor in my hands. I'd wanted the world to see Lily's kindness, not to turn it into a spectacle. The same people praising her now would move on soon enough. But what if they didn't? What if they wanted more? Lily came running into the kitchen holding a drawing. Another rainbow, this one with a tiny stick figure holding a microphone. "Look, Mommy," she said, giggling. "It's me on TV." I forced a laugh, but my chest tightened. Somehow, she already knew she was part of something bigger, though she couldn't possibly understand what it meant. I knelt down, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You know, no matter how many people see your letter, you're still just my Lily, okay?" She nodded seriously, then wrapped her arms around my neck. "I love you, Mommy." "I love you too, baby." That night, the story hit national television. I didn't even realize it until my sister called, screaming into the phone. "You're on CNN. They're reading Lily's letter live on air." I turned on the TV, and there it was. The anchor holding a printout of Lily's letter, reading it aloud with tears in her eyes. The studio audience clapped. My daughter's words had reached millions. My hands shook as I watched, equal parts awe and fear washing through me. How could something so small, a child's note in crayon, ripple through the world like this? When I put Lily to bed that night, she whispered, "Do you think the cereal man saw it now?" I smiled weakly. "I think everyone has, sweetheart." After she fell asleep, I sat in the living room in silence, the glow of the television flickering across the walls. Every few seconds, my phone buzzed again. The world was watching us now. There was no going back. I reached for my laptop to check the latest messages, but one new notification stood out from the rest. A short subject line that made my stomach twist. From Office of the CEO, R.E. Lily's letter. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My hands trembled as I hovered over the email, afraid to open it, afraid of what it might mean. The world had already taken notice. Now the man behind the brand had too. And that's when the first email from corporate arrived. When the CEO of a billion-dollar company emails you, it doesn't feel real. I must have read that subject line a dozen times before I found the courage to click it. The letters blurred, my pulse hammering in my throat. There are certain moments when your brain refuses to believe what your eyes are seeing. For me, this was one of them. The email was short, polite, and impossibly formal. Dear Ms. Miller, this is John Hartwell, CEO of Maple Grove Foods. I recently came across your daughter's letter, and I have to say, it moved me deeply. Her words reminded me of why we do what we do. I'd like to personally thank her for her honesty and kindness. Warm regards, John Hartwell. Maple Grove, the cereal company, the very brand Lily had written to with her crayons and innocent hope. For a long time, I just stared at the screen. CEOs didn't write to people like me. Not personally. Maybe to investors or shareholders, but not to a struggling mother in a peeling house whose 6-year-old had sent a letter asking them to make cereal cheaper. It didn't make sense. First, I thought it had to be fake. Some kind of prank or maybe a fan-made email. But the domain was official, and a quick search confirmed it. John Hartwell, CEO of Maple Grove Foods. The man was a corporate giant, a public figure who only appeared on TV during major product launches or charity galas. And somehow he'd seen Lily's letter. My hands trembled as I typed a reply. I thanked him for his kind words, told him how much it meant to us, and added that Lily would be thrilled to know he'd read her message. I hit send and sat back, still in disbelief. The response came faster than I expected, less than 10 minutes later. This time it wasn't from him, but from his communications director, a woman named Emily Rhodes. Her tone was warm and enthusiastic, almost too polished. Hi, Ms. Miller. We've all been touched by Lily's letter here at Maple Grove. It's gone viral across our team's Slack channels and has truly brightened our week. We'd love to send a care package for your family, some of our cereals, maybe a few surprises for Lily, and a note from our CEO. Would that be okay?" The email sparkled with corporate friendliness, full of exclamation marks and soft phrases that made it sound like we were old friends. I hesitated. Something about it felt rehearsed, the way a salesman smiles just a little too wide. But I didn't want to overthink it. They were reaching out. They cared. Or at least they said they did. I agreed, and within an hour, Emily replied again. She asked for our address, said their PR team might want to feature Lily on their company social media, and hinted that Mr. Hartwell himself was deeply moved and might want to record a message. It all sounded harmless, kind even, but deep down, I couldn't ignore the small knot forming in my stomach. That night, when Lily got home from school, I told her the news. She was sitting on the floor coloring again, her crayons arranged in a perfect little rainbow. "Sweetheart," I said, trying to sound casual, "remember your letter to the cereal company?" She looked up, her eyes wide with anticipation. "Did they read it?" I nodded, smiling. "They did. The man who runs the company, the boss, said it made him really happy." Lily gasped, her tiny hands covering her mouth. "He did? The real cereal man?" "The real one," I said. "He even wants to send us some cereal and a note to thank you." Her joy was immediate and pure, the kind that makes everything else fade. She bounced on her knees, laughing, spinning around the room. "Mommy, I told you! I told you if I asked nicely, he'd listen!" I laughed with her, though my heart felt heavy. She had no idea what this world was capable of. I wanted to believe it was all good, that maybe, for once, something wonderful had found its way to us. But I never thought I'd see a luxury car parked outside our little house. It was a Wednesday afternoon when it happened, a day so ordinary it could have faded into the rest of my life unnoticed, if not for what came next. The sun had barely climbed over the rooftops, the streets were quiet, and the air carried that faint chill that always arrived a few weeks before winter. I was folding laundry when I heard the sound of tires crunching against gravel, slow and deliberate, stopping right outside our house. We lived on a street where the loudest sound was usually the mail truck or the neighbor's lawnmower, so the deep purr of that expensive engine felt completely out of place. I pulled back the curtain and froze. A sleek black car sat gleaming in the weak autumn sunlight, the kind of car that looked like it belonged in a commercial, not on our cracked driveway. The tinted window rolled down, and for a second I thought I was imagining it. The sharp suit, the calm composure, the unmistakable presence of someone who didn't belong to this world of peeling paint and dollar store curtains. It was him, John Hartwell, the CEO, the man whose name appeared in the email that had changed everything. I stood there for several seconds, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. A part of me wondered if this was some kind of elaborate prank, a social experiment, or a dream I hadn't woken up from yet. But when he stepped out of the car, adjusting his coat against the wind and glancing toward my front porch with a polite, practiced smile, the reality of it hit me in waves. I barely had time to move before Lily came running into the living room, clutching one of her drawings. "Mommy, who's that?" she asked, pressing her face to the window. I swallowed hard. That's the cereal man, sweetheart." Her jaw dropped. "He came here?" "Yes," I whispered, my heart pounding. "He came here." By the time I opened the door, he was halfway up the walkway, holding a bouquet of sunflowers and a neatly wrapped box. Everything about him was immaculate. The pressed suit, the silver cufflinks, the perfectly measured smile. He extended his hand, and for a second I hesitated before shaking it. His grip was firm, his voice smooth, every syllable measured like it had been trained for boardrooms and cameras. "Mrs. Miller," he said warmly, "it's an honor to finally meet you and your daughter. I hope I'm not intruding." I stammered something polite, still trying to process the surreal image of the CEO of a billion-dollar company standing on my worn-out welcome mat. He smiled. "May I come in?" I stepped aside, letting him enter. The contrast was almost painful, his tailored presence against the worn furniture, the scuffed floorboards, the faint smell of crayons and coffee that clung to our home. Yet he didn't flinch. He looked around with curiosity, even a hint of admiration, as if this modest space fascinated him. And then Lily appeared. She had changed into her favorite yellow dress, the one with the uneven hem she'd insisted on sewing, hearts onto herself. She clutched her crayon drawing in both hands and stared up at him, wide-eyed. "You're the cereal man," she said softly, like she was seeing Santa Claus in the flesh. He knelt to her level, his polished shoes creasing against the floor. "That's right," he said kindly. "And you must be Lily. I've been looking forward to meeting you. Your letter made a lot of people smile, including me." Lily giggled shyly, hiding behind my leg. "I just wanted to help Mommy buy cereal." He chuckled, his expression softening. "And you did more than that. You reminded the world that kindness still exists. That's something grown-ups forget sometimes." For the first time, he seemed almost human, not the distant figure from news articles or financial magazines, but a man touched by something real. He handed her the box he'd been carrying. She tore it open carefully, revealing a collection of art supplies, brand new crayons, colored pencils, markers, sketch pads, all neatly arranged inside a custom wooden case with her name engraved on it. Lily gasped, her eyes shining. "It's so pretty," he smiled. "Every artist deserves the right tools. Maybe one day we'll see your drawings on our cereal boxes." She squealed with delight, spinning around the room as if the world had suddenly expanded to include her dreams. I watched her, torn between gratitude and disbelief. This was the kind of thing you only saw in feel-good commercials or viral videos designed to make people believe in miracles. The CEO turned to me, his expression softening. "You've raised a remarkable little girl," he said, "the kind of child this world needs more of." "Thank you," I replied quietly. She's everything to me." He nodded thoughtfully, glancing toward the window where the afternoon light cast golden streaks across Lily's drawings taped to the walls. "You know," he said, "when I read her letter, I couldn't stop thinking about it. It wasn't just adorable, it was humbling. Sometimes when you run a company this big, you forget who you're really serving. You forget the faces behind the numbers." I wanted to believe him. He sounded sincere, or maybe just practiced enough to make sincerity sound effortless. But there was something about the way he said, "company this big," that reminded me of the gap between his world and mine. A gap so wide that no amount of kind words could truly bridge it. He stayed for nearly an hour, sitting at our kitchen table, sipping the cheap coffee I offered him in a chipped mug he accepted without complaint. He asked about Lily's favorite foods, her school, her drawings. He even asked about me, my job, my life, my hopes. I answered carefully, unsure how much to reveal, aware of every stain on the counter, every scuff on the walls. At one point, Lily climbed onto his lap, showing him a drawing she'd made of him and his cereal factory surrounded by rainbows. He laughed, genuine and warm, and promised to hang it in his office. "I'll make sure everyone at Maple Grove sees it," he said. There was a moment, brief but powerful, when I almost believed this was pure, that this man had come here simply because he cared about what my daughter had written. because it had touched something human inside him. But then, as his driver stepped inside to remind him of his next meeting, his tone shifted ever so slightly, the warmth replaced by that familiar corporate cadence. Before leaving, he turned to me. "Mrs. Miller," he said, "I'd like to do something more, not just for Lily, but for your family." I hesitated, my heartbeat quickening. "You've already done so much. You really don't need to—" He raised a hand gently. "Please. It's the least I can do. I believe stories like yours remind people of what truly matters. I'd like to share that message. Together." There was a small pause. His words hung in the air like something both promising and heavy. I smiled politely, but unease prickled at the back of my mind. Together. It sounded innocent enough, but the way he said it felt rehearsed, like it had been approved by a team of publicists. When he finally stepped back toward the car, Lily ran after him, waving her little hand in the cold wind. "Thank you, Mr. Cereal Man," she shouted. He turned, smiling as the driver opened the car door for him. "No, Lily," he said. "Thank you." I stood on the porch, watching the car pull away, its taillights disappearing around the corner, the sound of the engine fading into the distance. My daughter stood beside me, clutching her new box of crayons, her cheeks flushed with joy. For a while, we just stood there in silence. She looked up at me, eyes full of wonder. "See, Mommy? I told you he listens." I brushed her hair back gently, forcing a smile. "You did, sweetheart. You really did." But as I watched that black car vanish beyond the trees, a strange feeling settled in my chest. Not gratitude, not relief, but a quiet, uneasy question that wouldn't leave me alone. Because for all his warmth and charm, there had been something in his eyes when he'd said goodbye. Something unreadable. Something strategic. But what he said next made me question everything. He said it could change our lives forever, and he wasn't exaggerating. The call came 2 days after his visit. I was standing at the kitchen sink, scrubbing the same coffee mug I'd washed 3 times already, when the phone rang. I almost didn't answer. The number was unfamiliar, long, corporate, the kind that usually meant a bill collector or a survey. But something in me hesitated before letting it go to voicemail. I wiped my hands on a towel and picked up. "Mrs. Miller?" The voice was smooth, confident, unmistakable. John Hartwell. For a second, I forgot how to breathe. "Mr. Hartwell," I said finally, my tone, half surprised, half nervous. "I wasn't expecting—" "I hope this isn't a bad time," he interrupted politely. "I've been thinking a lot about our meeting, about Lily." My heart tightened. "She still talks about you," I said, glancing at the living room where Lily was sprawled on the carpet, drawing another picture of rainbows and cereal boxes. He chuckled. "I'm glad to hear that. She's remarkable, truly. You should be very proud." "I am," I replied quietly. There was a pause, deliberate, thoughtful, before his tone shifted into something more measured, the kind of cadence people use when they're about to make an offer. "Mrs. Miller," he began, "I've been discussing Lily's story with my board and our marketing team. We all feel inspired by her. What she did, the simplicity, the sincerity, it reminded us why our brand exists. It's authentic, and that's something money can't buy." I wasn't sure where he was going, but the words marketing team made my stomach twist. He continued, "We'd like to feature Lily and your family in an upcoming campaign. Nothing invasive, of course. Just a short video telling your story. We'd film it here, in your home. You'd be compensated naturally. It would be more than just an ad. It would be a message about kindness, family, and hope. A story America needs right now." I went still. My hand gripped the edge of the counter, knuckles white. I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator, the scratching of Lily's crayons, and beneath it all, the faint echo of disbelief pulsing through me. "Mr. Hartwell," I said carefully, "that's generous, but I'm not sure we're the right people for something like that." He laughed softly, the kind of laugh designed to put people at ease. "That's exactly why you are the right people. You're real, genuine. We don't want actors. We want truth." His words were flattering, almost disarming. For a moment, I allowed myself to imagine it. The extra money, the relief from the constant weight of overdue bills, the chance to give Lily something better. Maybe a new home, a new start, maybe even a college fund. He must have sensed my hesitation because his voice softened. "Listen, I understand your concern. This isn't about exploitation, it's about celebration. We want to honor Lily's heart, and frankly, we want the world to see what we saw in her and in you." Something about that last phrase, "in you," made me uneasy. I forced a polite smile even though he couldn't see it. "Can I think about it?" "Of course," he said smoothly. "Take your time. I'll have Emily reach out tomorrow with the details. And Mrs. Miller, this could truly change your lives." When the call ended, I stood there for a long time, phone pressed to my chest, staring out the window at the dull gray sky. Change our lives. It echoed in my head like a promise and a warning, all at once. That night, after putting Lily to bed, I sat at the kitchen table surrounded by unpaid bills, my laptop open to my dwindling bank account. The numbers were small, almost cruel. Rent was due in 4 days. I had $43 to my name. The idea of turning down his offer felt impossible. The money they'd pay could keep us afloat for months, maybe longer. I could finally fix the leaking roof, maybe buy Lily a proper bed instead of the creaky hand-me-down she slept in. But every time I thought about it, something inside me whispered, no. I kept replaying his visit. The warmth in his voice, yes, but also the way he'd looked around our house, assessing it, like a man scanning a set before a shoot. There had been something behind his eyes, calculation, maybe, or curiosity, something that didn't belong in a moment of kindness. The next day, Emily called. Her voice was as bright and rehearsed as ever. "Hi, Ms. Miller. I just wanted to follow up on Mr. Hartwell's offer. We're so excited about the possibility of working together. Our creative team is already brainstorming ideas. We'd love to shoot a short piece about Lily's letter, maybe with her reading it on camera." "Would she have to do interviews?" I asked, my tone sharper than I meant it to be. "Oh, nothing stressful," she said quickly. "Just natural moments, smiling, coloring, being herself. We'll take care of everything, production, editing, even transportation if we film elsewhere. And of course, you'd both be compensated." "How much?" I asked before I could stop myself. There was a pause, then a smile I could almost hear through the phone. $50,000. The words hit me like a physical force. 50,000. I sat back in my chair, dizzy. That was more money than I'd ever seen in my life. I could fix everything with that. "Ms. Miller?" Emily said gently. I don't know what to say," I stammered. "Just say yes," she replied kindly. "This is a beautiful opportunity. For you and for Lily. The world already loves her. Now they'll get to see who she really is." I didn't answer right away. I just stared at the cracks in the kitchen table, tracing them with my fingertips. "Can I call you tomorrow?" "Of course," she said, her tone still sweet. "But if possible, we'd love to start planning this week. Momentum is everything in these viral moments." After she hung up, I sat there in silence, my mind spinning. Momentum. Viral moments. It all sounded so temporary, so transactional. The kind of language that stripped something human and turned it into currency. That night, I watched Lily sleep. Her hair fanned out across the pillow, her little hand clutching one of her new crayons even in her dreams. I thought about the word exploitation. It was ugly, harsh, but it hovered there in the darkness. Was I protecting her or holding her back? Was I selfish for wanting to keep her safe from the spotlight, or foolish for turning down a chance that could change everything? The next morning, I found her sitting on the living room floor again, drawing a new picture. It was of our house, only this time it looked bigger, brighter, the sky painted blue instead of gray. "This is our house when we're rich," she said proudly, showing it to me. I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. "Sweetheart, do you think it's okay for people to make money from nice things you do?" She tilted her head. "If it helps you, then yes. That's what good things do. They help people." I kissed her forehead, my chest tightening. How could I explain that the world didn't always work like that? That sometimes good things get twisted, and the people who smile the widest are the ones holding the sharpest knives? Later that afternoon, I received another email, this one directly from John Hartwell. "Mrs. Miller, I just wanted to say again how much we believe in this project. It's not just about cereal, it's about heart. I think it could mean a lot to people, and to you." It was signed simply, John. I stared at it for a long time, torn between hope and suspicion, between the life we had and the one I could almost taste. $50,000. A campaign seen by millions. A future that didn't hurt so much. It all sounded perfect, maybe too perfect. Because underneath all the shiny words, something about it didn't sit right. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Overnight, we went from heroes to villains. It happened faster than I ever could have imagined. One day, we were America's sweet story, a mother and her kind-hearted little girl who'd reminded the world to care again. And the next, we were something uglier, exploited, manipulative, fake. The shift didn't come with a warning. It started as a few skeptical comments buried among the praise. People asking questions that hadn't been asked before. Is this real? Looks staged. Why is the mom suddenly doing interviews? And then, like rot beneath the surface, it spread. By morning, the tone had changed entirely. News blogs that had once called us America's darlings now ran headlines dripping with accusation. Heartwarming or calculated? The truth behind the viral cereal letter. Comment sections turned toxic. People dissected every frame of our interviews, every word I'd said, every smile Lily had given. One clip went especially viral, a moment where I'd laughed nervously during a talk show appearance. Someone slowed it down, added dramatic music, and posted it with the caption, "This mom's fake laugh says it all." It didn't matter that I was terrified of cameras, or that I hadn't slept in days. The internet had made up its mind. I wasn't a struggling mother anymore. I was a schemer, a woman using her child for attention. The first real blow came when an article surfaced claiming Maple Grove had paid us for exclusive media rights. An outright lie, but that didn't stop it from spreading. Within hours, my inbox filled with hate mail. Disgusting. You're exploiting your daughter. I hope she grows up and sees what you did. Every word felt like a bruise. I stopped checking my notifications, but it didn't help. The story had become too big to hide from. People online began digging into my life, my job, my finances, even my past relationship with Lily's father. They twisted everything they found into ammunition. Someone posted a photo of our house, calling it the grifter's nest. When I picked Lily up from school that week, parents whispered in the parking lot. I could feel their stares, a mixture of pity and judgment. The same mothers who'd once congratulated me for raising such a sweet daughter now avoided eye contact, pulling their children closer. That night, I turned off the TV, unplugged my phone, and sat on the floor of Lily's room. She was asleep, her tiny hand clutching her new box of crayons, the one John Hartwell had given her. I listened to her soft breathing and tried not to cry. I'd promised her the world wouldn't hurt her, but I'd been wrong. The world doesn't care how pure your intentions are. It just loves to watch you fall. By the end of the week, our mailbox was overflowing. Some letters were kind, drawings from other children, words of support from strangers who still believed in us. But most were not. Handwritten hate, scrawled accusations. I stopped opening them. Emily from Maple Grove called me 3 times, leaving upbeat voicemails that sounded more strained each time. "Hi, Ms. Miller. Just checking in. We're monitoring the situation closely. Mr. Hartwell sends his regards." Monitoring the situation. That phrase made my skin crawl. On Friday morning, the campaign offer we'd been discussing vanished, just like that. One email from Maple Grove's PR department, cold and impersonal. "Dear Ms. Miller, after careful consideration, we've decided to pause the proposed collaboration. We appreciate your time and wish your family all the best." No explanation. No apology. Just gone. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the words until they blurred. Lily came in holding one of her drawings, a new rainbow, this one smaller, shakier. "Mommy," she said softly, "why are people saying mean things about us?" I felt my throat tighten. "Because some people don't understand, sweetheart. Sometimes when a lot of people see something nice, others get jealous or angry." She frowned, thinking. "But I was nice." "I know you were," I whispered. "You still are." She nodded, then hugged me, tight, like she knew I needed it. "It's okay, Mommy. Maybe they'll like us again tomorrow." Her innocence cut deeper than any insult. I wished I could believe her. That evening, I sat outside on the porch with a blanket wrapped around my shoulders, watching the sky fade into dusk. The neighborhood was quiet, but I could feel the weight of everything pressing down. The noise of the internet, the betrayal, the silence from Maple Grove. When my phone rang, I almost ignored it, but the name flashing on the screen made my stomach twist. John Hartwell. I hesitated before answering. "Mr. Hartwell?" I said, my voice barely steady. "Mrs. Miller," he replied, his tone calm but noticeably cooler than before. "I assume you've seen the news." "I've seen it," I said quietly. "It's been difficult." He sighed, the sound practiced, measured. "The internet moves fast. These things happen. Public perception can turn overnight." "It's not just public perception," I said, my voice rising slightly. "They're saying horrible things. About me, about my daughter, and your company. You're not defending us. You're letting people think this was all a stunt." There was a pause on the other end. Then, carefully, "We're doing what we can, but from a corporate standpoint, it's complicated. The narrative has shifted. If we make a statement now, it could backfire." I almost laughed. Complicated. That was his word for abandoning us. "So you're just going to walk away?" I asked, anger seeping through the exhaustion. "After everything?" His tone hardened. "Mrs. Miller, please understand. This has become bigger than either of us. Our shareholders are watching. We can't afford bad optics right now." Bad optics. I wanted to scream, to tell him that this wasn't about optics. It was about a little girl who'd written a letter because she believed kindness mattered. But I knew it wouldn't change anything. To him, This was already a closed chapter. "I trusted you," I said finally, my voice shaking. "You said this was about heart." There was a brief silence, the kind that feels like someone choosing their next move carefully. "It was," he said softly, "and maybe it still can be. But for now, it's best we both stay quiet. Let things settle." The line crackled. For a moment I thought he'd hang up, but then his voice changed, lower, almost hesitant. "There's something else," he said. "Something you should know." My pulse quickened. "What do you mean?" He exhaled, a sound heavy with things unsaid. "Some of the backlash, it's not organic. Certain accounts are amplifying it, anonymous ones. Someone's pushing this story harder than usual." I blinked, trying to process it. "Are you saying someone's behind it?" "I'm saying," he replied carefully, "that not every storm starts by accident, and you didn't hear that from me." The silence between us thickened. My grip tightened around the phone. "Mr. Hartwell, what are you not telling me?" He hesitated. Then his voice softened again, almost regretful. "Mrs. Miller, I need to go, but we'll talk soon. There are things I can't discuss over the phone." "Wait." The line went dead. I sat there on the porch, the cold wind stinging my face, my mind spinning. The world had turned on us, the company had backed away, and now even the man who'd once promised to help us sounded like he was hiding something. I looked back through the window at Lily, sitting on the floor, drawing in the dim light, her small world untouched by the chaos consuming mine. For her sake, I had to stay strong. But in that moment, one thought refused to leave me. And then the CEO called again, but this time his tone had changed. That's when I realized my daughter's crayons had become a corporate weapon. The first sign came quietly, buried in a news segment I almost missed. It was a Wednesday evening, the house dim except for the flicker of the television. Lily was asleep on the couch, one arm draped over her stuffed bear, crayons scattered like fallen soldiers across the coffee table. I wasn't really watching the news, just letting the noise fill the silence. Then a headline flashed across the screen. Maple Grove Foods faces lawsuit over misleading advertising claims. My stomach dropped. The anchor's voice was calm, detached, the way journalists talk when something big is breaking. The billion-dollar food corporation, Maple Grove Foods, is under investigation for alleged false health claims in several of its breakfast products. I sat up straighter. The report went on, describing a public relations nightmare, class action suits, government scrutiny, public distrust. And then, seamlessly, the segment cut to something that made my blood run cold. A commercial. It wasn't just any ad. It was our story. Lily's crayon letter, my kitchen table, the soft voiceover about honesty and family values. They'd used the footage from our interview, the one I'd thought was just for their internal campaign, and edited it into a polished, emotional narrative. My daughter's innocent words played over dramatic music. "Dear cereal man, please make it cost less so my mommy can buy it again." Then, the tagline appeared. Maple Grove Foods, made with heart. I froze, every muscle in my body going still. It wasn't just exploitation, it was manipulation. They'd taken Lily's innocence, her simple act of love, and turned it into a shield for their corporate scandal. They weren't celebrating her. They were using her. The betrayal hit like a physical blow. I remembered John Hartwell's soft voice, his carefully chosen words about kindness and truth. I remembered the way he'd looked at Lily like she represented something pure. Now I saw it clearly. He hadn't seen my daughter. He'd seen an opportunity, a distraction, a story so heartwarming it could smother headlines. I turned off the TV and sat there in the dark, my heart pounding so loudly it drowned out every other sound. The quiet of the house felt different now, not peaceful, but suffocating. The next morning I checked the internet, and my worst fears were confirmed. Their campaign was everywhere. Millions of views, headlines praising Maple Grove for reconnecting with families. The same news outlets that had covered their legal trouble now ran glowing articles about their commitment to community. And at the center of it all was Lily, smiling, drawing, laughing, blissfully unaware that her face was now plastered across every screen as a symbol of a lie. By noon, the phone started ringing again. Reporters wanted my comment. Bloggers wanted interviews. I ignored them all. Then, as if on cue, an email from Emily arrived. "Hi, Ms. Miller. We're thrilled that the campaign has been received so positively. The feedback has been incredible, and Mr. Hartwell sends his thanks. This is truly a beautiful moment for your family and for the company. We hope you're as proud as we are." I stared at the screen, my hands trembling. Proud? They'd turned my daughter's crayons into a smokescreen. They were hiding their deceit behind her kindness. I replied before I could stop myself. "You used my child's image without my consent. You lied. This wasn't about kindness. It was about cleaning up your reputation." The reply came within minutes, colder this time. "Ms. Miller, you signed a release form allowing Maple Grove to use the footage for promotional purposes. We appreciate your participation and regret that you're upset. Unfortunately, there's nothing further we can do." My vision blurred with tears. That form, the one Emily had sent weeks ago, the one buried in friendly emails full of cheerful emojis, I'd signed it without reading every line. It had looked harmless. I'd trusted them. I'd trusted him. For the rest of the day, I couldn't focus on anything. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that ad again. Lily's voice echoing over the sound of soft piano music, the words that once made me proud now twisted into corporate propaganda. That night, after Lily fell asleep, I sat alone in the living room, staring at her drawings taped to the walls. Rainbows, smiling suns, stick-figure families, all innocent, all pure. But now they felt different. Stained. I picked up one of her broken crayons from the table, turning it over in my hand. This simple tool she'd used to express her love had become a marketing weapon. My daughter's crayons were now instruments of deception, painted across billboards and television screens. The anger came slowly, simmering beneath the surface until it felt like fire in my chest. I wasn't just angry at the company. I was angry at myself, for being naive, for not seeing it coming, for letting them turn something sacred into something sold. The next day, I called Maple Grove's corporate office. The receptionist's tone shifted the moment I said my name. "Please hold," she said quickly. A minute later, John Hartwell's voice came on the line. "Mrs. Miller," he said smoothly, "I was hoping to hear from you." I didn't waste time. "You're using my daughter's image to distract people from your lawsuit." He paused, just long enough to confirm I was right. "That's a very serious accusation," he said finally. "It's not an accusation," I snapped. "I saw the ad. You took her letter, her heart, and turned it into a PR stunt. How could you?" He sighed, and I could hear the practiced calm in his voice, the same tone he'd probably used in 1,000 board meetings. "You have to understand, Mrs. Miller, these things are bigger than either of us. Your daughter's story gave people hope at a time when the world needed it. Isn't that what matters most?" "No," I said coldly. "What matters most is truth. And you twisted it." He didn't respond right away. Then, in a tone that made my skin crawl, he said, "You signed the agreement. We've done nothing illegal. I suggest you focus on the positive attention instead of fighting something you can't win." My hand tightened around the phone. "You think I'm afraid of you?" "No," he said softly. "I think you're a mother who wants to protect her child. So do I. That's why I'm advising you to let this go." The line went dead. I sat there, frozen. The message was clear, a warning, thinly veiled as advice. When I turned, I saw Lily standing in the hallway, rubbing her sleepy eyes. "Mommy?" she whispered. "Are you mad?" I forced a smile, wiping away tears before she could see them. "No, sweetheart, just thinking." She nodded, half asleep. "Did the cereal man call again?" "Yes," I said softly. "He did. What did he say?" I hesitated, staring at her small, trusting face. How could I explain that the man she admired had turned her kindness into a shield for greed? That he'd stolen her innocence and sold it as a story? "Nothing important," I whispered. "Go back to bed." After she drifted off, I sat there in the dark, the silence pressing down on me. Somewhere between the fear and the fury, a single thought began to take shape. Small at first, then sharp and unstoppable. They thought they could silence me. They thought they could use my daughter and get away with it. They were wrong. I had to make a choice, stay silent or fight back. That's when I realized my daughter's crayons had become a corporate weapon. The first sign came quietly, buried in a news segment I almost missed. It was a Wednesday evening, the house dim except for the flicker of the television. Lily was asleep on the couch, one arm draped over her stuffed bear, crayons scattered like fallen soldiers across the coffee table. I wasn't really watching the news, just letting the noise fill the silence. Then a headline flashed across the screen. Maple Grove, Foods faces lawsuit over misleading advertising claims. My stomach dropped. The anchor's voice was calm, detached, the way journalists talk when something big is breaking. The billion-dollar food corporation, Maple Grove Foods, is under investigation for alleged false health claims in several of its breakfast products. I sat up straighter. The report went on, describing a public relations nightmare, class action suits, government scrutiny, public distrust. And then, seamlessly, the segment cut to something that made my blood run cold. A commercial. It wasn't just any ad, it was our story. Lily's crayon letter, my kitchen table, the soft voiceover about honesty and family values. They'd used the footage from our interview, the one I'd thought was just for their internal campaign, and edited it into a polished, emotional narrative. My daughter's innocent words played over dramatic music. "Dear cereal man, please make it cost less so my mommy can buy it again." Then, the tagline appeared. Maple Grove Foods, made with heart. I froze, every muscle in my body going still. It wasn't just exploitation, it was manipulation. They'd taken Lily's innocence, her simple act of love, and turned it into a shield for their corporate scandal. They weren't celebrating her. They were using her. The betrayal hit like a physical blow. I remembered John Hartwell's soft voice, his carefully chosen words about kindness and truth. I remembered the way he'd looked at Lily like she represented something pure. Now I saw it clearly. He hadn't seen my daughter. He'd seen an opportunity, a distraction, a story so heartwarming it could smother headlines. I turned off the TV and sat there in the dark, my heart pounding so loudly it drowned out every other sound. The quiet of the house felt different now. Not peaceful, but suffocating. The next morning I checked the internet, and my worst fears were confirmed. Their campaign was everywhere, millions of views, headlines praising Maple Grove for reconnecting with families. The same news outlets that had covered their legal trouble now ran glowing articles about their commitment to community. And at the center of it all was Lily, smiling, drawing, laughing, blissfully unaware that her face was now plastered across every screen as a symbol of a lie. By noon, the phone started ringing again. Reporters wanted my comment. Bloggers wanted interviews. I ignored them all. Then, as if on cue, an email from Emily arrived. "Hi, Ms. Miller. We're thrilled that the campaign has been received so positively. The feedback has been incredible, and Mr. Hartwell sends his thanks. This is truly a beautiful moment for your family and for the company. We hope you're as proud as we are." I stared at the screen, my hands trembling. Proud? They'd turned my daughter's crayons into a smokescreen. They were hiding their deceit behind her kindness. I replied before I could stop myself. "You used my child's image without my consent. You lied. This wasn't about kindness. It was about cleaning up your reputation." The reply came within minutes, colder this time. "Ms. Miller, you signed a release form allowing Maple Grove to use the footage for promotional purposes. We appreciate your participation and regret that you're upset. Unfortunately, there's nothing further we can do." My vision blurred with tears. That form, the one Emily had sent weeks ago, the one buried in friendly emails full of cheerful emojis. I'd signed it without reading every line. It had looked harmless. I'd trusted them. I'd trusted him. For the rest of the day, I couldn't focus on anything. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that ad again. Lily's voice echoing over the sound of soft piano music, the words that once made me proud, now twisted into corporate propaganda. That night, after Lily fell asleep, I sat alone in the living room, staring at her drawings taped to the walls. Rainbows, smiling suns, stick-figure families, all innocent, all pure. But now they felt different. Stained. I picked up one of her broken crayons from the table, turning it over in my hand. This simple tool she'd used to express her love had become a marketing weapon. My daughter's crayons were now instruments of deception, painted across billboards and television screens. The anger came slowly, simmering beneath the surface until it felt like fire in my chest. I wasn't just angry at the company. I was angry at myself. For being naive, for not seeing it coming, for letting them turn something sacred into something sold. The next day, I called Maple Grove's corporate office. The receptionist's tone shifted the moment I said my name. "Please hold," she said quickly. A minute later, John Hartwell's voice came on the line. "Mrs. Miller," he said smoothly, "I was hoping to hear from you." I didn't waste time. "You're using my daughter's image to distract people from your lawsuit." He paused, just long enough to confirm I was right. "That's a very serious accusation," he said finally. "It's not an accusation," I snapped. "I saw the ad. You took her letter, her heart, and turned it into a PR stunt. How could you?" He sighed, and I could hear the practiced calm in his voice, the same tone he'd probably used in 1,000 board meetings. "You have to understand, Mrs. Miller. These things are bigger than either of us. Your daughter's story gave people hope at a time when the world needed it. Isn't that what matters most?" "No," I said coldly. "What matters most is truth, and you twisted it." He didn't respond right away. Then, in a tone that made my skin crawl, he said, "You signed the agreement. We've done nothing illegal. I suggest you focus on the positive attention instead of fighting something you can't win." My hand tightened around the phone. "You think I'm afraid of you?" "No," he said softly. "I think you're a mother who wants to protect her child. So do I. That's why I'm advising you to let this go." The line went dead. I sat there, frozen. The message was clear. A warning, thinly veiled as advice. When I turned, I saw Lily standing in the hallway, rubbing her sleepy eyes. "Mommy?" she whispered. "Are you mad?" I forced a smile, wiping away tears before she could see them. "No, sweetheart. Just thinking." She nodded, half asleep. "Did the cereal man call again?" "Yes," I said softly. "He did." "What did he say?" I hesitated, staring at her small, trusting face. How could I explain that the man she admired had turned her kindness into a shield for greed? That he'd stolen her innocence and sold it as a story? "Nothing important," I whispered. "Go back to bed." After she drifted off, I sat there in the dark, the silence pressing down on me. Somewhere between the fear and the fury, a single thought began to take shape. Small at first, then sharp and unstoppable. They thought they could silence me. They thought they could use my daughter and get away with it. They were wrong. I had to make a choice, stay silent or fight back. For the first time, I stood up not as a mother, but as a fighter. The moment came quietly, not with fireworks or revelation, but with a silence so sharp it felt like the world was holding its breath. I was sitting at the kitchen table again, the same table where Lily had written her letter weeks before, her crayons still scattered across the wood like tiny, colorful ghosts of innocence. The company had taken everything sacred about that moment and turned it into profit. I couldn't let that stand. I opened my laptop and stared at the blank screen, the cursor blinking like a heartbeat. Every part of me was afraid of losing what little we had, afraid of the backlash, afraid of what John Hartwell could do. But there was something stronger than fear rising inside me now. It wasn't anger anymore. It was conviction. For the first time since this began, I wasn't reacting. I was deciding. I started to write, not as the desperate mother the world thought I was, but as a woman who'd seen too much to stay quiet. I wrote everything: how they'd approached us, the offers, the manipulation, the lies buried beneath smiles. I attached copies of the emails Emily had sent, the contracts they'd slipped past me under the guise of kindness, the proof of how they'd twisted Lily's innocence into their redemption campaign. Then I recorded a short video. No filters, no edits, no production, just me in our kitchen, speaking directly into the camera. My hands trembled, but my voice didn't waver. "My daughter's Crayon letter was never meant to sell cereal," I began. "It was meant to remind people to care." But instead of listening, a corporation saw it as an opportunity. They took her kindness and turned it into their shield, a distraction to hide the truth. I spoke for nearly 10 minutes, telling the whole story, unfiltered. The fear was still there, whispering that I was making a mistake, that I'd be crushed by lawyers and PR machines. But I couldn't stop. Every word felt like reclaiming a piece of the truth they'd stolen. When I finished, I looked at Lily's drawing taped to the wall, the one of the rainbow over our house. "This is for you," I whispered, and hit post. Within an hour, the video began to spread. First, it was small, a few shares, a few sympathetic comments. But then it started moving faster. People began tagging news outlets, demanding answers from Maple Grove. Hashtags formed, questions multiplied. Crayon truth trended within hours. The same audience that had once turned on us was now turning on the company. Journalists started digging into Maple Grove's advertising practices. Old reports resurfaced, employee testimonies leaked. Suddenly, my story wasn't just about a letter. It was about corruption, exploitation, and how far a billion-dollar brand would go to save itself. The phone rang again, but this time I didn't answer. I already knew who it was. I turned the phone face down and went to check on Lily. She was sitting on the floor, coloring quietly, humming to herself like nothing outside that room mattered. She looked up and smiled. "Are we happy again, Mommy?" I knelt beside her, tears stinging my eyes. "Not yet, baby, but we're getting there." That night, I barely slept. My video had reached 1 million views by midnight, 5 million by morning. News outlets picked it up, showing clips of me alongside Maple Grove's original campaign. The contrast was brutal. One woman's raw truth against $1 billion lie. But with every surge of attention came new fear. I received messages warning me that I was risking everything, that the company could sue, that I could lose custody, that my life would be destroyed for speaking out. Maybe they were right. But after everything I'd already lost, my privacy, my peace, my trust, I realized there wasn't much left for them to take. Around dawn, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You're making a mistake. Stop before it's too late." No name, no number I recognized, but I knew where it came from. I didn't stop. Instead, I posted again, this time sharing screenshots of Maple Grove's emails and their so-called partnership agreement. I wrote a single caption. "They thought a signature could silence a mother. They were wrong." By the next afternoon, the story had exploded. News anchors debated it on live television. Activists praised me. Lawyers contacted me offering help pro bono. Even a few former Maple Grove employees came forward anonymously, confirming everything I'd said. The tide was shifting again, but this time it wasn't in their favor. Still, I knew better than to celebrate too soon. The internet was fickle, and power had a way of striking back when threatened. I could almost feel it coming. That quiet before the next storm. Late that evening, as I sat watching the numbers climb on my video, the phone rang again. The same number as before. I stared at it for a long moment, my heart pounding. Then I picked up. It was John Hartwell. His voice was no longer calm, no longer polished. There was something raw in it now, something cold. "You shouldn't have done that," he said. "You shouldn't have lied," I replied. He exhaled sharply. "You've made this much worse than it needed to be." "For you, maybe," I said. "Not for the truth." There was a pause. "Mrs. Miller," he said finally, his tone quiet but dangerous, "you don't understand what you've started." He hung up before I could answer. I sat there in the dark, staring at the silent phone, my hands trembling but my resolve unshaken. I didn't know what he meant or what would happen next. All I knew was that I wasn't afraid anymore. And my next move would shock the entire internet again. This time we went viral for all the right reasons. The second wave didn't crash. It surged, fast and unstoppable, like the truth had been waiting too long to be heard. Overnight, my video became more than a story. It became a spark. Within 24 hours, it had been shared across every major platform, stitched into reactions, dissected by commentators, and discussed by voices far louder than mine. But this time they weren't laughing, doubting, or accusing. They were listening. People began to rally. Hashtags spread like wildfire. Watch her Crayon truth. Let kids be kids. Stand with Lily. Parents, teachers, and strangers all over the country shared stories of their own, times they'd been misled, used, or ignored by corporations pretending to care. For once, the internet wasn't devouring something good. It was defending it. And at the center of it all was Lily's letter. Those uneven, innocent words written in pink crayon now being held up as a symbol of honesty in a dishonest world. The very thing they had stolen from her had turned against them. News outlets picked up the story again, but this time they told the truth. Major networks ran side-by-side comparisons of Maple Grove's heartwarming campaign and the leaked contracts I'd posted. Investigative journalists confirmed what I'd said. The company had indeed launched Lily's ad the same week their lawsuit hit headlines. The timing wasn't coincidence, it was damage control. Reporters dug deeper, finding internal memos that hinted at an intentional PR pivot, emails between executives referring to our story as the perfect distraction. When those leaked, it was over. By Thursday, Maple Grove's social media accounts were flooded with anger. Their comment sections turned into battlegrounds. Every post they made, even about new products, was met with one question repeated thousands of times. Where's the apology? For the first time since this nightmare began, I didn't feel powerless. I remember sitting at the same kitchen table where Lily had written that letter, watching the chaos unfold through my screen. I wasn't celebrating, I was shaking, not from fear this time, but from relief. For weeks, they'd held the narrative, twisting it, owning it. Now I had it back. Lily peeked in, still in her pajamas, holding her stuffed bear. "Mommy, why are people being nice again?" she asked. I smiled, pulling her into my lap. "Because they finally know the truth, baby. They know you were never wrong." She tilted her head, thinking. "So the cereal man's in trouble now?" I hesitated, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "He might be, but that's not what matters. What matters is that people are listening." She nodded, satisfied, and went back to coloring, humming softly to herself. Her world was still simple, still safe, and I was determined to keep it that way. That afternoon, an anchor on a national news broadcast read Lily's letter aloud again, the same words that had started everything. Only this time, it wasn't a symbol of cute innocence. It was evidence. The tone had changed completely. Behind her, a photo of John Hartwell appeared on the screen beside a headline that made my heart pound. CEO accused of exploiting viral child story for PR cover-up. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt hollow. Because while the world was finally seeing what I had seen, I couldn't stop thinking about how close I'd come to letting them win. Then the phone calls started again. Only this time, they weren't from journalists or PR teams. They were from lawyers, advocacy groups, even politicians. People wanted to help, to represent us, to turn this into something bigger, a movement against corporate manipulation, against using children as pawns. It was overwhelming. Emily called too. Her once cheerful voice now trembled. "Ms. Miller, I didn't know they'd go that far," she said, almost in tears. "I just followed orders." I didn't yell. I didn't curse. I just said, "You had a choice, Emily. We all do." And then I hung up. By the end of the week, John Hartwell's public silence became its own story. Every network, every podcast, every blog demanded a statement from him. When he finally appeared, it was in a pre-recorded video with the company's logo behind him, his voice calm, rehearsed, hollow. He apologized for any misunderstanding, insisting the campaign had been meant to inspire, not distract. But the world didn't buy it this time. The apology was dissected, mocked, analyzed frame by frame. Every gesture, every word looked like what it was. Damage control from a man who'd run out of control. For the first time since this began, I felt like we'd won something. Not money, not fame, but clarity. Still, a strange quiet lingered beneath the victory. I could sense it, the way calm follows a storm but doesn't erase the wreckage it leaves behind. One night, I sat by the window watching the streetlights flicker outside, and I realized how much had changed. Our faces had been on screens across the country, our story told and retold, twisted and reclaimed. But underneath it all, we were still just two people, a mother and her little girl, who had tried to do something small and honest in a world that only knew how to make everything big and complicated. As I tucked Lily into bed, she whispered sleepily, "Mommy, are we happy now?" I kissed her forehead. "We will be," I said. She smiled, her eyes fluttering shut. "Good, 'cause I made something for you." I frowned, curious, but she was already asleep. On her nightstand lay a folded piece of paper, drawn in her favorite pink crayon. I didn't open it yet. I wanted to hold on to the peace of that moment a little longer. Outside, the world was still buzzing with our story, still dissecting every angle, every motive. But in that quiet room, I felt something shift, like the end of one chapter and the quiet breath before another began. And just as I started to believe the storm had finally passed, my phone lit up again. A new email, a new subject line. Confidential, for your eyes only. But we still had one last surprise waiting for us. In the end, it wasn't the money or fame, it was a crayon letter that changed hearts. The email sat in my inbox for almost an hour before I opened it. I stared at the subject line, confidential, for your eyes only, and felt that old tremor of unease crawl back through me. After everything that had happened, every lie, every threat, every apology that wasn't really an apology, I wasn't sure I wanted to know what came next. When I finally clicked it open, the message was short, just a few lines. Mrs. Miller, I know I've lost your trust, and I don't expect to regain it. But there are things you should see. Not as leverage, not as defense, as truth. JH attached was a folder of files, internal memos, emails, recordings, proof of everything I'd claimed, and more. The documents exposed how the marketing team had planned the Lily campaign weeks in advance, right after the lawsuit had broken. They'd cherry-picked our story to manipulate public emotion and hide the scandal. At the center of it all was John Hartwell, but the messages also revealed something unexpected. He'd fought internally to end the campaign after realizing how far it had gone. His board had overruled him. The CEO the world had painted as a cold manipulator had, at least for a moment, tried to pull the brakes. For the first time in months, I didn't know what to feel. Anger, still, pulsed in me, but beneath it was something quieter, confusion, maybe even pity. Was he trying to make things right, or simply cleaning up what was left of his conscience? The next day, a statement from Maple Grove hit every news outlet. John Hartwell had resigned. His video apology, different from the corporate one, was raw, almost haunting. He sat in his office, no logos behind him, no script in his hands. I built a company that lost its heart, he said. And when a little girl reminded us of what honesty looks like, we tried to use her light to hide our shadow. That was wrong. I was wrong. Mrs. Miller, if you're watching this, I'm sorry. He paused, his voice thick. We can't undo what's been done, but we can make sure it means something. By the next day, Maple Grove announced a new initiative, the Lily Miller Foundation for Childhood Creativity, a yearly scholarship fund for children who used art, writing, or imagination to make a difference. It would be funded entirely by Maple Grove's top executives, with no branding, no advertising, and no publicity campaigns attached. Just real help, quietly given. When I told Lily, she didn't understand the gravity of it. She was too young to grasp what her letter had started, but her eyes lit up anyway. So, kids can draw stuff and get help for school? That's right, I said softly. She grinned. That's good. Everyone should get crayons. The innocence of her words undid me. I pulled her close, burying my face in her hair, and for the first time since all this began, I cried, not from fear or anger, but from relief. The days that followed were strangely calm. The noise online faded into gratitude and quiet reflection. Journalists stopped calling. People stopped knocking. For the first time in months, I could breathe. Sometimes I'd find Lily sitting in her favorite corner, coloring like she always had. Only now, her drawings looked different. The rainbows were brighter, the hearts bigger, the smiles steadier. She'd stopped drawing our house small. In her pictures now, it stood tall and whole, surrounded by color. One evening, I found her taping a new drawing above her bed, a picture of a crayon letter with wings. "What's that one about?" I asked. "It's flying," she said matter-of-factly, "because it helped people." Her words made me smile through the ache. She would never know the full extent of what her letter had done, how it had shaken a billion-dollar company, ignited conversations about ethics and truth, and reminded millions that sincerity still mattered. But maybe that was the point. She didn't need to understand the power of her innocence. She just needed to keep it. Weeks later, we received a small package in the mail. Inside was a framed copy of Lily's original letter, restored and preserved behind glass. Beneath it was a handwritten note. For Lily, whose crayons changed more than she'll ever know. John. I stared at the words for a long time. Not forgiveness, not closure, just acknowledgement. And maybe that was enough. That night, after tucking Lily in, I sat at the kitchen table one last time. The same spot where it all began. The scars of the past months still lingered, but they didn't sting anymore. I realized that the world would move on eventually. People would forget the details, the hashtags, the debates. But somewhere out there, a few children would get the chance to dream a little bigger because of a 6-year-old and her box of broken crayons. I smiled at that thought. For once, the silence in the house felt peaceful, not heavy. Just as I was about to head to bed, a soft knock echoed from the front door. At first, I thought I'd imagined it. It was late, too late for visitors. I hesitated, then opened the door. No one was there, just the night breeze, cool and quiet. But when I looked down, I saw a small envelope resting on the welcome mat, my name written across it in familiar handwriting. Blocky, childlike, pressed too hard into the paper. I knelt down, my hands trembling as I picked it up. The flap was sealed with a pink crayon heart. And then, one final message arrived in the mail. That letter is now framed on her wall, a reminder that kindness still matters. Years have passed since the crayon letter that changed everything. The noise has faded, the headlines have disappeared, and the world has moved on, as it always does. But in our home, one thing has never changed: that framed piece of paper hanging above Lily's desk. The colors have softened with time, the wax fading gently under the glass. But the words still shine with the same truth they carried the day she wrote them. Every morning, the sunlight hits the frame and scatters faint streaks of color across the wall, like a quiet echo of her childhood. Sometimes I catch her standing there, now taller, older, more sure of herself, tracing the crooked letters with her fingertips. She doesn't say much about it anymore, but I can see what it means to her. It's not just a memory. It's a compass. Lily's 12 now. The little girl who once believed she could fix the price of cereal with kindness has turned into someone even more extraordinary. She still draws, but her pictures have grown more detailed, more daring. She sketches city skylines, faces, and stories, whole worlds that seem to pour out of her without hesitation. And though she doesn't remember all the chaos that surrounded her letter, she remembers the feeling behind it. She remembers wanting to help, to make something better, even in her small way. Last year, she entered an art contest held by a community foundation, not the one Maple Grove had started, but one created by a group of teachers and parents who'd been inspired by her story. Her piece was simple: a child handing a crayon to an adult who'd forgotten how to color. It won first place. The judges said it made them cry. When they handed her the award, she didn't talk about the viral story or the CEO or the past. She just said, "I wanted to draw hope." Watching her that day, I realized how much she'd understood, not through words, but through life. The world had taken something from her once, but she had taken it back, reshaped it, and given it meaning again. Sometimes people still recognize us. A few remember the story, though most only recall fragments. "You're the serial letter mom, right?" they'll ask with a nostalgic smile. I nod politely, but I don't correct them. Because yes, I was that mother. But what they don't see is what came after. The quiet healing, the rebuilding, the slow return to normal. The story they remember ended online. Ours kept going. Every so often, Maple Grove sends updates about the Lily Miller Foundation. Hundreds of scholarships have been awarded since its creation. Kids from small towns, big cities, broken homes, and hopeful hearts have used those funds to study art, literature, design. Their letters, handwritten, painted, drawn, fill a digital archive that continues to grow every year. I sometimes browse through it when the house is quiet. There's something comforting in knowing that from the mess of lies and greed, something good survived. I never heard from John Hartwell again. After his resignation, he disappeared from the public eye. Rumors said he moved out west, opened a small non-profit focused on education. I don't know if that's true, but I hope it is. Maybe he found his redemption, too. Lily still keeps a box of crayons, even though she mostly uses pencils and paints now. The box is old and scuffed, its paper label peeling at the corners. I once asked her why she didn't throw it away. She smiled and said, "Because these are the ones that started everything." Sometimes, when the weight of the world feels heavy again, I sit at her desk and look at that framed letter. The words remind me of everything we went through. The fear, the betrayal, the noise. But they also remind me of something deeper. That even in a world so loud and cruel, a small, honest act still has the power to echo farther than you think. People often talk about how stories go viral, as if that's the end goal, the flash of fame, the numbers, the recognition. But what they don't tell you is that the real story begins after the noise fades. It begins in the quiet, in the lessons, in the changes, in the people who keep the message alive when no one's watching anymore. Lily doesn't remember the hate, the headlines, or the lawsuits. She remembers love, a letter written for her mother, sealed with a pink crayon heart. Maybe that's how it should be. I've stopped fearing the internet, though I've never returned to it the same way. Sometimes people message me to say that her story helped them believe in something again, not in brands or companies, but in the simple act of trying to be kind when the world makes it hard. When I think of everything that happened, I no longer feel bitterness, just gratitude for the storm that stripped us bare and showed us what really mattered. For the daughter who never stopped believing that good things could happen if you just asked kindly enough. For the colors that outlasted the gray. Tonight, the house is quiet again. The hum of the refrigerator, the faint sound of Lily's pencil scratching against paper, the same old rhythm of life, ordinary and perfect in its smallness. I glance up at that letter, framed in gold light, and something in me settles. It's a reminder that truth, no matter how fragile, always finds its way through the noise. That innocence, once lost, can sometimes be reclaimed, not by erasing what happened, but by choosing to remember it differently. Lily looks up from her sketchpad, smiling. "Mom," she says softly, "do you ever miss when things were simple?" I smile back. "Sometimes," I tell her. But then I look at that letter, and I think, maybe simple never really left us. Maybe we just had to find it again. I turn off the lights, leaving only the glow of that framed paper on the wall. The crayons beside it gleam faintly, their colors catching what little light remains. Proof that even small things, when held on to long enough, can still shine. And whenever I see those crayons, I remember the day the world finally listened. If this story touched you, don't just scroll away. Share it with someone who still believes small acts can change the world. And if you'd like more true stories that remind us what really matters, make sure to subscribe, because our next one might just stay with you forever.